Good evening, everybody. Today, yes, as Vignesh was saying, we are going to talk about how technology is impacting what we are doing. I'm sure most of us will recognize, especially during this COVID time, a lot of these kinds of online sessions are happening on one side. Students are being trained online, be it school or college. So office work is happening online. So a lot of it, which hitherto was not thought of as something that could go online, is becoming online. And that's basically because of technology. Having said that, I would probably start with thanking Skillcraft Consulting for giving me this opportunity to speak in this forum, wherein I will just give a brief about how technology can impact and how we can gear up for it. So this is what I propose to do today, probably in the next 40 to 45 minutes. I will talk about why technology. I know COVID made us go towards technology, but let's really understand why technology as the first thing. Then what I will do is, as I said, it's more focused on student and faculty also to an extent. So I will also talk about what are the technology trends. This will help professionals who are looking at growing faster or students who are eagerly waiting to get into the industry and all those people to understand where we are moving. And we will also see what does it mean to us or what is in it for us as probably a professional or an entrepreneur versus a faculty versus a graduating community. So this is what I propose to cover in the next 40 to 50 minutes. Hope I am audible and my screen is visible. Any questions, feel free to give your questions on the Q&A box that you see on your right side of the live screen. We will address all the questions as appropriate, right? Okay. So first thing is we need to see why technology. Basically, I have grouped it into roughly 7 points. The first and foremost is I'm saying it improves communication. So let's imagine a scenario wherein we are in this kind of working from home or remote teams and all that. If you notice, all of us are aware, a lot of it, even before COVID, we have started moving towards remote work community, working community, remote teams and all that, which means I'll have to be effectively communicating with each other almost on a real-time basis, because it's just not communication, but I also need to collaborate with them in a case-to-case basis to such an extent that I will be able to work as if I am sitting next to them. One good example is what the tool that we are using today. I am talking from one place, Vignesh is in another place, and all of you are in your own locations looking at it live. So there are a lot of these opportunities, collaborations that could happen. So this definitely enables us to. Now, without this, we are dependent on telephones, and more importantly, I'm assuming even if you're going to classify smartphones as technology, then probably you're missing that also. Then you'll have to look at landlines, STD calls, and all that, which is not going to help. So first thing came up was smartphones, and then a lot more technology now coming in is definitely enabling a better communication and a better collaboration. That's on one side. Now, this also means we are bringing in a better efficiency in terms of what we are doing, because I'm able to collaborate well. Hitherto, without technology, we would have probably been collaborating on phone and all that, but we will not be collaborating live. You can't see me, I can't see you, and that has its own advantage. So there are a lot of things that goes into it. Plus, with online collaborations, online reviews, lot more discussions can happen, brainstorming can happen effectively, so I'll be able to deliver better. Now, this fourth one, enhancing market penetration, is a big ticket item. Now, I'll probably quote an example. Normally, when we go into, let us say, for example, a shop where we have to buy, let's say, a t-shirt or a trouser or whatever, we go there, there is a salesman who will ask us 20 questions, based on which he will pick a few. We will say, this is not the one, that is not the one. We'll pick something. So that's what happens. Whereas today you log into Amazon, you search for one item. There are additionally, along with that one item, you may also like your friends bought this, your peers bought this, people in your location got this. So I have gone to the extent of selling for individual persons. I no longer have to talk about your festival sales and all that, but I am able to sell for individual persons. How am I able to do it? I understand the likes and dislikes of the individuals. How do I understand the likes and dislikes? We search for a lot of it on the internet. We ask questions related to some of these. We would have browsed within Amazon or Flipkart in terms of some of these products. And while we logged in or when we created an account, there is a big chunk of demography that was given by us, like our age, location, our job, so on and so forth. So Amazon is using all that data, collating it across people of similar age group, people from same location, then whatever you browsed and all that, consolidates it and gives it to you. Now, I call this a market penetration because 90% of the time, I log in to buy a charging cable for my phone and I ultimately change my phone because there is an exchange offer, there are add-on benefits. I use a HDFC card, I get a better discount. So I get into those modes wherein they are able to convince me to get it done. So the market penetration is high. Similarly, YouTube. Originally, when we started, YouTube had no ads. Then ads came in with skip ad option. Today, your video will play after this ad is played. That is where it gets into a lot of scenarios. And we have also started getting YouTube without ads and all that you want to try. So the market is expanding with the technology coming in. So there is a lot of opportunity for us to build a lot more in terms of what we want to. Then comes this green ticket item, Industry 4.0. Now, this is a term that we have been abusing to death, very frankly speaking, with due respects to all people involved. Now, basically, I will talk about what Industry 4.0 in a while, but basically the essence of Industry 4.0 talks about three distinct factors. One is digitize all your value chains. By digitizing all your value chains, it means supply chain, your customer needs, all that goes in for you to do a perfect selling. You will have to digitize all of them. And second point, it talks about digitize your products and services. So whatever I sell, get into it. And third, but not the last, but not the least, the last one, but not the least, it talks about digitizing your customer needs, which means I no longer ask my customer, but I tell my customer. So those are the three distinct pieces that comes in from an Industry 4.0. We will talk a little bit more in detail about it in a couple of slides next. The next one talks about enhancing the customer relationship. The good example that I gave you earlier in terms of Amazon fits the bill there. I am able to relate well. If you want another example, YouTube videos, for example, invariably when you close or come to an end of the video that you're watching, the next video that comes in is 99.9% perfect one that you would have probably seen by searching for it. So he has built a lot of analytics around it in terms of building a scenario where I'm able to do. Now, having gone to this level, I as a customer would start liking to go back. An analogy for it is how many of us use a Yahoo search window or a Bing search or a search called a DuckDuckGo. All of us go into Google search because even before I start typing, it tells me a list of things. I choose something and then I go around. So I start liking it, so I start going in. So all of it is making technology indispensable to such a level that this is what happens. Now, this is not a wheel of fortune. This is the wheel of 1 minute. Normally, this is published end of every year, but thanks to COVID scenario, this was published for 2020 sometime in May this year also, which was not the normal process, but they did it because between March and May, a lot more of working from home came in, a lot more of connectivities and technology came in, so they decided to build it. Now, if you notice some things that might probably interest you, Instagram, the most favorite window shopping spot, and I'm sure most of you will agree, most of the so-called the millennials or the college students today, especially girls, spend most of the time shopping in Instagram. This was roughly around 350,000 scrolls last year. And in the first 5 months, if you notice, it has already doubled. We are talking about 700,000 scrolls. That's the maximum time we spend. 4.5 million videos has become 4.7 million videos. TikTok was never there last year, but it has come. Probably end of the year, it'll again go away with the TikTok ban that has happened. Interestingly, look at this tweet. 87,000 has become 200,000 almost, probably because COVID related tweets are also coming in. There are a lot more other discussions coming in, celebrities talking about safety and all that. So there is a lot more that comes in. Amazon, if you look at it, was around 900,000. Now it is 1.1 million. Netflix has increased, number of hours watching. Google searches have increased. Facebook logins have increased. Look at every single activity. This is the best part. There is at least 400,000 apps that get downloaded. Now, mind you, I am reading all of them one after the other because I cannot do it together. But in reality, all of it is happening together in 1 minute. That is the scenario today. Now, how is it possible? Very simple. All of us are used to these smartphones that we are able to get into a scenario wherein we are starting to respond to everything really real time. Now Facebook login is there, so if somebody puts in through a Facebook Messenger, I will immediately respond from my phone. Look at this, Facebook Messenger is already here, so that comes in. Or for that matter, if I'm logged in, so anything that I want to search, even on the YouTube, like today, for example, a lot of people have started cooking, which hitherto they were not doing in the past and all that during this COVID time. So there is a lot of video that I look at it. So I look at it on the mobile, stand in my kitchen and then work on it. So a lot of it is happening because of the smartphone. So one thing that I normally tell a lot of people who say they are not technologists is, as long as you know how to use smartphone, you are a technologist, which means there is a lot that happens in terms of using that smartphone. Today, I'm using a Dunzo to get some items from the grocery or fruits or vegetables or whatever it is sitting in my home. Today, I book a cab. Fine, during COVID we don't, but otherwise, you know, Ola is still running. So I book a cab or I book an auto sitting in wherever I am sitting and then take it forward. So if you really look at it, anything and everything that I want to do, I sit in the sofa at home and start working on it. While there are other negatives in terms of obesities and health hazards and all that, I'm not getting into that because the focus is here on technology. So I'll talk about the technology aspect here. So smartphone has enabled us to do this. So one of the reasons why it is becoming indispensable, or why I'm saying we are able to improve the efficiency or able to relate to the customer better, is this. Another example for customer relation, you have downloaded an Amazon app or a Flipkart app. For 15 days, you don't log in. For 5 days, why 15 days? You don't log into that app. You will start getting notifications saying this has come up there, this has come up there, or you go browse something, don't buy. He starts sending you a message. So that's a relation that he's trying to build with you, so that on an average, at least one purchase is made by you every other day. So these are some of the gimmicks that we work on. These are marketing trends that we work on. Now, the other point that I talked about was Industry 4.0 here, and here we go. Now, this Industry 4.0, if you really look at it, is nothing but the fourth revolution in industry. The first one came in the 1800s, 19th century per se, when we were a British colony. And then we moved on into the second one, which was in the early 1900s, which was in the 20th century beginning, wherein mass production started moving in, steam engines started coming in and all that. The third revolution was sometime in the 80s. That's when Rajiv Gandhi and Sam Patrida started looking at computers being brought into India. So there was a lot that came up. Now, the fourth revolution is in terms of what started off in Germany, which all of us are running around. The difference between the third one and the fourth one is computerization came in. Now, but for Rajiv Gandhi or Sam Patrida, we would have still been lagging. We actually skipped one chunk of computerization in US and then came online with what was happening. So we were able to align. Now the government is working on Make in Indias and all these FDIs and opening it out in terms of the public market. Is all that because a lot of these activities can come in. Already we talk about a lot of people wanting to move out of China, coming into India and all that. Now, all of it is actually bringing up this Industry 4.0 focus. Now, what does Industry 4.0 say? All that it says is it says cyber physical systems. Now, what does it mean? Cyber physical systems means the physical systems. Now, in Industry 3, we had your desktops, we had all those network connections coming in and all that. Industry 4.0 is going beyond that. Now, what is happening is all those which are not talking as of today, the so-called non-living things in our science subject are now talking. For example, a very mundane example, which I'll bring it up here, is now let us say, for example, Let us say, for example, we are into a scenario where we normally, what do we do when we have a pre-cooked food that's stored in a refrigerator? We pick that, see what is the type of food, how long was it refrigerator, keep it in the microwave and reheat it for that time so that it is palatable for us. Let's imagine the same thing going differently. You pick the food from the refrigerator, keep it in the microwave. Microwave talks to the refrigerator, checks out what type of food, how long was it inside, and then decides the heating capacity here, and then it heats. That's doable. Probably 12, 13 years back, those of you who were live enough in terms of looking at all these marketing things and all that, we had a cup and saucer symbol and they said microwave is Java enabled, fridge is Java, refrigerator is Java enabled. They wanted to use Java coding for it, but that has evolved because of what we call as Internet of Things, which is here. A lot of it in terms of sensor-based operations have started coming in. So I am able to interact much faster in a much better way with these RFIDs technologies. So machine to machine discussion is very easy. Mobile based operation is becoming easier. So with the advancement of technology, I am able to get into this. So there are advanced robotics. We have robotics already into the healthcare. We are looking at our robotics coming into some of these packaging industries. We are looking at a lot more cognitive computing coming in, because cognitive computing is more in terms of what we call as the integration of the human brains and the machines together in terms of what we do, which means a lot more storage doesn't matter. Cloud computing, in a very simple mundane term for cloud computing, if you really look at it, is you work on Facebook, you work on any of these digital medias, or for example the WhatsApp. Now when you do that, what is happening? The data is stored elsewhere. We don't even know where the data is stored, but it is available. So you know there is something existing, you feel it, you can't touch it, just like how the cloud is seen outside today. That's why the term cloud computing in a very simple term. So now all of this has enabled us to go deeper into the implementation of Industry 4.0, which talks about three distinct ones, which I told you earlier on the earlier slide. One is digitize all your value chains. Two is digitize your product and service. And three is digitize your customer needs. So all of it is now possible. How? RFID sends data. Internet of Things are sensors, you get data. So robotics, it does something, gives you data. Machine to machine, it is data. Mobile technology is data. So everywhere there is data, which means I need to be careful, and that is what is cybersecurity all about. I need to be careful. That is what cybersecurity is all about. But at the same time, I can use all this data that is available for me to do an analysis to understand where am I and where do I want to go. A good example is typically when an iPhone new release comes in, or for that matter, Samsung premium models comes in, or any other mobile model premium coming in, there is always a product leak 3 or 4 months prior to the release. It's actually a mock that's being done by the vendor or probably the manufacturer, wherein we do a beta testing without seeing the product. So we start talking about this is nice, that is nice, this is bad, this should have been positioned this way. So what these manufacturers do is they collect all the feedback that we give, they segregate it geographically, age group wise, and so on and so forth, multiple genres, and then put them together to say what is accepted, what is not accepted, whatever could be changed, they make a modification and release, and we are all happy to say, yeah, whatever I said has come in. Whatever I said has come in kind of a scenario. And that's exactly what we are talking about as getting closer to the customer. If you notice here, all of what I had discussed here focuses on the data. So data becomes the new oil. In God we believe, all else bring data is now becoming a reality. Nothing works without a data. To my children, if I say something, the first thing they ask is, why should I do? Where is the proof for it? So that's how the next generation is also getting into. So with all this, it is really, really important that we understand this technology and start using it in a manner which will help us grow better. And already industry is starting to look at it. The technology trends that are happening here, I don't think there are any questions, so I'll continue. The technology that is being used here, the trends are moving. Now, the idea behind my showcasing this industry trend here is more because we will have to, as professionals or entrepreneurs, you need to know where the industry is going so that you prepare yourself. As college grads, you need to know what type of industry you're going to work in. And as faculty, that could probably be the other group of people who could attend. Faculty, we'll have to set the ground rules for the college students to understand. So ultimately, industry perspective becomes very, very important, and that's where this comes in. Now, the emerging technology, if you really look at it, as per the recent survey that was recent analysis that was done by IDC, this is the tech spend that they looked at from 2018 to 2023, and we are kind of on the midway. 2020, middle of 2020 is somewhere in the midway. It says the emerging technology is doubling. 104% is the growth. Software industry is 50% additional growth. Hardware 23%, technology services 23%, telecom 5%. But believe me, with the COVID and all, they're saying this telecom is actually increasing. All of us are able to listen to this seminar or whatever only because we have the telecom there. Failing which is going to be difficult. Telecom, I mean telecom, network, phone, everything that comes in here. Now, what is the focus in terms of emerging technology? IoT, Internet of Things. This is SaaS, PaaS, cloud-based aspects. Robotics, drones, we know it. Robo-based operations are being done. Analytics, security, artificial intelligence platform, your AR, VR, virtual reality, augmented reality. Now that's very simple. Virtual reality, augmented reality is more in times like I get a feel of what I am doing without actually doing it. It's one step ahead of your 3D films that you're doing. In 3D films, you see the image getting closer. In case of your virtual reality, you're almost there. It's like you're feeling it. If there is a rain, you will have water sprinkling on you. That's the kind of scenario you get into. So virtual reality, augmented reality comes into that. So that would probably be a best one for manufacturing industries where they are coming into training on some of the critical aspects. A very good one on aerospace industries, aerospace, aeronautics and all that, it could be really, really helpful. Plus training, big time. I don't have to really talk about training in terms of videos, but I can get into all these virtual reality, augmented reality scenarios. IoTs are sensors, so I can connect, I can do whatever. I can improve my parking scenario, given a choice. I can figure out where is the space and then take it. That is one. Or using IoTs, sensors are enabled so that even in a manufacturing unit, I can look at the quality of the product and then take it forward in terms of how we went about. So there are a lot of those aspects that comes in. Robotics, we already talked about healthcare. So all of this is the focus. Now, here I slightly drill down. When we talk about infrastructure, what does it mean? Cloud computing, networking, storage. So it's all IT based. I agree. People who are non-IT or elsewhere, it comes here. There are a lot of these quality assurance, user experience, and some more in terms of the next slide that will talk about it. Just give me a sec, I'll come there. Now, those of the technologists who are already into this field, they can look at cross training themselves in such a way that they get loaded with it. When somebody is a server administrator, he can cross train himself on storage so that he can get into the storage world, or he can do both of it, or he can cross train himself on networking to manage, or cross train himself on cloud computing. So there is a lot that could come in. Somebody on mobile device management, he can probably see how he can build an Internet of Things kind of a scenario, or any combination that you could work on. So the key is roughly, if you really look at it out of the respondents, this is again part of the IDC setup. If you really look at it, the technology is definitely focusing on infrastructure on one side. The other side is software development. But the key is it's not the normal software development that we used to have in the past. This is all more on user experience. Today I'm on the mobile. Anything and everything is easily accessible and executable for me. So I will have to start looking into it. So yes, there is a question on what happens to FMCG. Just give me a minute, I'll come back to it. So I need to have a user experience. Then quality assurance, machine learning, artificial intelligence, mobile development, all these are new areas. Now, the next thing that comes in is a lot around data, database administrative, analytics. So those of you who are not technologists can still be analytics. If, say, for example, you're someone who likes to work on data, you can get into the specifics in terms of trying to see how best you can slice the data, project it and present it in such a way that people can take decisions, or you can go deeper, make decisions. Or you could get into Any other area in terms of visualizations alone. Now visualizations, all these are graphs are visualizations. Image is going to tell you much more than what we talk or we put as a text. So today visualization is a separate line of opportunity. College grads, keep a tab on this. Visualization is definitely becoming a line of opportunity in terms of employment. There is a lot that happens. The top three tools are Power BI, Tableau, ClickView. There are a lot more tools that are there. Free tools are available. Power BI, for example, gives you a free development tool. Tableau, for example, gives you a public Tableau site. So those are one side. Analytics, I can get into Python, R. Those who are not on data or who are at a managerial level, you don't have to know the technology, but you need to know the technology jargons. There are courses which will enable you to do some of those technology, understand some of those technology jargons. Or you could probably take an MBA with specialization on analytics, which talks about these technology jargons. Or you could pick just these, let's say a Python R and R, somebody giving you a training, which you can pick and then take it forward. And then cybersecurity is another area. As I told you, everything is data oriented. So when everything is becoming data oriented, it is really important that we safeguard the data. Whatever I know, only I should know. Some of you would have seen, you look for probably a flight from Chennai to Bangalore. From then on, when you get into Facebook, you'll see ads related to Chennai to Bangalore. Yes, Sujata madam, I'll come into 3D. So Chennai to Bangalore comes in and a lot of those aspects happen. So those are where technically you can safeguard yourself. Facebook gives you an option wherein you can drill down to the 4th level or the 5th level on your security options, where you can say such cookies are not to be enabled. But it is more important to take care of it. Ransomware kind of issues are all coming in. There is a lot of risk. So this is definitely picking up really, really fast, much faster than the infrastructure. These two in this page, if you really look at it, are two big ticket items that especially people who are looking at entering the job arena can definitely look at if their base graduation enables them to. Nothing wrong if it is not, we can still be able to do certain aspects of the cybersecurity. Like for example, I can become a hacker, or for example, I can become a data visualization expert. So all those are definitely possible. Now I'll pause here. There are two questions. One is on FMCG. Now FMCG industry, there are two folds that we are talking about. Now let's take a simple FMCG example. Now how does FMCG operate? There is a production unit, they keep producing. Now how do they produce? They are producing based on their demands. Now when the demands are clear, they plan how much should be produced, then look at how much of the raw material is available, and then make a procurement based on it. This is the basic chain, value chain that we talk about in terms of supply chain. This is the basic supply chain value chain. Now, all of these aspects I can automate in the sense, what is my requirement as a demand? I can take it from the industry in terms of your social medias, in terms of your feedbacks, in terms of your past history versus a present and all that on one side. Then I can integrate it with my production requirements and the raw material inventory availability so that I can automatically handle a procurement. This is on one side. On the other side, if you really look at it, FMCG talks a lot in terms of sales across multiple what we call as retail stores or probably the network of agents which who sell. So let's say, for example, in Amardanjan, they have a lot of these products wherein they start selling in multiple regions through multiple stores and all that. So in such cases, if you really, really look at it, how can I time it out in terms of perfect delivery? So when is it just in time kind of a delivery to be brought in just in time? So I will have to manage the logistics and then I will have to manage the inventory because storing in excess is a cost, which I need to reduce. At the same time, losing out by not selling something which is in demand is again a challenge. So all this can be predicted effectively using predictive analytics so that I will be able to build a process wherein the production can get into multiple areas based on what I propose to get into. Hope that answers the question on FMCG. Now 3D printing. Now this is actually a technology which is slowly catching up. Now very mundane, if you are a technologist, probably we can catch up offline wherein I'll talk about how this goes about. My connects are there, but at a very mundane level, keeping in mind the other participants also, at a very, very mundane level, if you really look at it, 3D printing is a 3D image being printed as it is so that it is usable. Now, there could be question saying, does that mean I can draw a pistol and then start using the pistol by printing it? While there are not so many easy aspects that goes in. There are some checks and balances in terms of printing. Today, 3D printing is being looked at in terms of bringing in some nuance from niche aspects around healthcare. Now, what we are trying to look at in terms of healthcare is we are talking about, let us say, for example, transplant, in terms of heart transplant, liver transplant. There are opportunities that could exist wherein we could use a 3D printer. Very simply, the 3D image being printed in a 3D, like a live image, is your 3D printing in a very simple term, very mundane, non-technical term. But technically, there are a lot more nuances in terms of it, in terms of how do I build it, what is the type of printer I need to use, what is the type of material that I need to use so that I get it usable. So there are a lot more nitty-gritties that comes in, but it is slowly catching up. It has yet not gone into a level like some of these are there, but it definitely is catching up. And that is where this data fabric, which comes in terms of combination of this data fabric, which you're with your continuous intelligence and all this comes in terms of some of your 3D printing related aspects. So with that said, I will get into the Gartner prediction, wherein he's talking about analytics, data being effectively used, machine learning. Now, this artificial intelligence, machine learning is another big ticket item that we have been beating to death, again, with due respects to people involved. What does it mean? It's very simple. We train ourselves. The human brain gets trained by practicing, seeing things, listening to things, grasping things, doing things. The machine has to learn the same way. So we give some mock information based on which it learns and then makes decisions. So a dumb system is now becoming intelligent. That is artificial intelligence. Which means for the machine to learn effectively, I need to provide the right kind of data. Like for example, 99% of those who are here in this forum, all of us, if you go back and check with our elders, parents or whomever, they will agree. We would have learned that touching fire will hurt us. It will be hard only after touching fire in our childhood, within the first 2 years of our age. So something similar, we'll have to practice it. So we'll have to enable the machine to learn. So we give data. Now the difference here is the data volume is huge today because of the advent of all these interfaces and all that. The data volume is really huge. So with that in mind, the analysis needs to take a lot of data and make decisions, but cannot go too far behind, nor can it be too close to the current situation. So you need to know the right amount of data, build some training information, logics in terms of decisions based on the data, and then test it out. And if there is something not coming out appropriately, it's not wrong. You have not given data related to that scenario, so load that data. So basically what you are doing is you are building systems that are intelligent enough so that you get smarter and use a lot of these emerging technologies like your 3D printing, the blockchain, the graph analytics, the persistent memory servers and all that, so that your solutions and your operations become much more scalable. So that is what actually happens in terms of what we try to do in terms of your requirement on the technology trend. So as a person who's already into the industry, it is very easy for me to understand what is the technology, and then I can get into the specifics in terms of the technology. But there again, I need to identify the right methodology to upskill myself. Those of us who are at the education institutions, I am one of those who try to attach myself more towards education institution, though I am a practitioner, basically because I'm also a visiting faculty, adjunct faculty, and training is my passion. So I normally say those of us are for the people who are on the education industry. Now, those of us who are on the education industry, what is important is educate the next generation in terms of focusing on these areas which are important, which means if we are educators, we need to tell them the real life scenarios. We need to tell them how somebody is working on something, how are things changing, why is it changing, and all that gets into the specifics. Now, okay, there is a question on cybersecurity. Now I'll take a minute there on cybersecurity. We talk about, we had these warning coming up from our banks and government in terms of ransomware, right? That's a cyber intrusion. I need to safeguard myself. Very simply put, that is a need for a cyber security. Now, what can I do there? I will have to safeguard my data being compromised. Remember, we talked about Zoom having data compromised and all that, and then they made corrections, which means such training places, we will still be able to, an intruder can connect without our knowledge, which means the data that is available. Let's say, for example, somebody connects into my laptop. I have my business data, I have my banking data, all that goes for a toss. And there is this ransomware kind of a thing wherein I'll have to pay big money to safeguard myself. Now, cybersecurity is something wherein I will be able to learn how to handle these kinds of situations. How do I safeguard? And that becomes a line of business. That becomes a line of kind of consulting that I can get into. I could even do an analysis. Now, for example, a mundane example, the antivirus that you are talking about, which talks about firewalls, is a method of cybersecurity. Hope that gives you a basic info. Yes, to a greater extent, Sujata madam, the petty caddies that you are talking about can potentially be printed and taken up, but there are other nitty-gritties that we will have to get into the technology angle, which will help us into the scenario. Okay, having said this, I said this is the trend as per the Gartner. I talked about this is the trend. I am preempting a question from the audience. Will COVID-19 impact? Because the bigger challenge that we have is more in terms of financials related to it. So are we able to get it done? Will it have an impact? So here, if you really notice, this was a study conducted by Deloitte, and it summarizes by saying it is not impacted. Already far ahead, no impact. Artificial intelligence devices due to decline by 7 to 10% decline in smartphone. So we are talking about, if you really reduce to 2.2 million from 2.6, 0.4 million is not much. Professional robots, if you really look at it, professional robots are growing basically because we'll have to stay away, social distancing and all that. So I don't have to go, I'll use a robot. Ad supported videos, we know it is already increasing. Now 32 billion is becoming 30 billion, which is nothing, just 2 billion in terms of the overall market share we are talking about. Smartphones 459 is becoming 420, but we have enough and more on smartphones that we don't have to worry. Video games 14 billion, it can increase to 15.5, up to 30 to 40%. So if you notice, the impact is very, very minimal. So what does it mean? So what is in it for us? Now impact is minimal, which means it's all good news. All this is there. I need to focus here. If I am a working professional, let us say, for example, I am a technical person and I am probably a full stack developer or a Java developer. Now, how do I get into one of these? I can probably look at analytics as an area of operation. I can look at blockchain. Blockchain is basically more like a cycle chain, byte chain, wherein the links are created in such a way that the data loss or data manipulation is effectively explicitly brought out. So I can get into those kinds of learning where I can build in. So the way I would suggest is build in what you want to in terms of plan, in terms of what you want, where do you see yourself in any of these technologies based on the industry needs. Identify the courses. You don't necessarily have to pay. There is this Coursera, there is this MOOC, there is all these things which would probably help you learn, and only when you need a certificate, which is from the big names like your Microsofts and Amazons and IBMs, you need to pay. Failing which a basic participation certificate is good enough. Look at it. Or you could even look at low-cost trainings that could happen by a lot of other vendors who would help us in terms of getting into the bucket. So identify, plan your training. If required, identify mentors. There are a lot of mentors who are available who could do it. I have been mentoring a lot of people. I'm part of the Analytics India magazine mentor group, where I mentor a lot of data analytics people. I mentor a lot of college students. I mentor a lot of professionals who are in the initial period and all that. So identify some mentors, take their help, identify and come out with a calendaring plan in terms of where do you want to go, how do you want to go, and how soon you want to go, and go for it and start moving into it. Those of us who are entrepreneurs, if you want to be hands-on, move more like the working professional thought process. But if you think you don't want to be hands-on, but you want to implement technology, typically start with a problem area. Where do you think you need to focus on? Identify what it is. Like, for example, task management is a problem. So look for tools that will help you in task management, a tool like a Trello. Let us say communication is a problem. Look for a tool that will help you communicate, maybe a Slack. or you want a little bit more, go for communication tools like your Teams, wherein you can share screens, you can collaborate, you can do it. So identify something. You might need a support from the technologist, but that fine, you will still be able to achieve what you want to in terms of what you are doing. So it is very important that you will get into the details. So whoever is anonymous, my mail details are available on the screen. You can always pick it from there and then connect with me offline. So you can identify the technologies who will help you out, support on the technology implementation plan, and then keep moving ahead. While the professionals are already in it, it's easy. Now, suppose if there are professionals who are not on it, let us say, for example, somebody on a manufacturing industry, or let us say, for example, somebody on a manufacturing industry in HR. Now, he can look at data. HR has got a lot of data and he has been working on data. So he can probably look at a data analytics, which will enable him get into HR analytics. Or sometimes he can look at a recruitment analytics if he is into recruitment. So he can do something which will value add his operational requirement so that it will make his job easier, and that will give him a better wherewithal in terms of moving or changing the career path. It's like probably 10 years back, as finance person who is basically a finance guy, hardcore finance graduate or a chartered accountant, slowly became a FICO consultant and get into SAP and then moved on into ERP, moved on as a CTO. So they planned it. The same way you could plan and keep moving based on it. So working professionals, the technology, a lot easier. Who are not technical, you can look at these kinds of focus and take it. Entrepreneurs, it's a lot easier. You pick and choose what you want to do to take it forward. Now, what is it in terms of faculty? We are actually creating the next generation. So it is very important that we make them realize that everything is data oriented, analysis oriented, which means there is nothing that he can talk on thin air. Our students will have to have clear-cut indications in terms of what is happening, where is it happening, how is it happening, and all these aspects. So it is really, really important that the left brain and the right brain of every student works. Otherwise, he is losing his market value. So as faculty, we need to go beyond classroom teaching. We need to act as mentors, which means we need to tell them what is happening on the industry. We need to enable them to give scenarios in terms of real-time advantages, connect with industry people, help them, talk to them, build the connect in terms of mentor connects, be it industry institute interactions, which are more bigger forums, get into specifics, form smaller groups, build projects, keeping in mind some of the mentors and all that, enable them to try it out. The other thing is, whether you like it or not, people will have to go back to mathematics and statistics. Anything and everything is data oriented, and if I need to be in the analytics space, I need to know the statistics and maths, failing which I will not be able to survive. So it is important that I get into that speed. We will also have to tell them what is important is one, completing the graduation or the post graduation that they are doing, but that is not the boundary line. That is only a gateway for you to enter into the industry, and you need to understand what is happening in the industry, which means industry talks about confidentiality, cybersecurity, data analytics, so on and so forth, which we'll have to take on. But more importantly, you should tell them he needs to be agile. He cannot sleep over things. Okay, I will think of analytics. Probably I'll start from 2021 Jan. He's already lost 6 months. But in reality, he would have lost 6 years there because the technology is advancing so fast. So we need to keep motivating them to get into it and make them have a mindset which is learn, adapt, and grow. Failing which the LAG will take over, that is lag. So it is really, really important that they need to really, really learn, adapt, and grow. So as faculty, we need to give them more real life experiences. We need to give them more data to get them realize all these. So they don't expect us to read what is there in the curriculum. They can use Google to learn certain things. So we'll have to give them the practical aspects. We'll have to talk about the real life scenarios, the real time scenarios, and all of it, which is what will enable them to succeed. So that said, now for the students, now what will happen to these students? Now students, they are the future. As late Dr. Abdul Kalam was also saying, They are the future. So the graduating community, I put it in generic terms, but it is both graduates, postgraduates, doctorates, whatever you want to call, anybody who's trying to go from a typical college mode into a working community. Things have changed. They no longer, they are called the millennials today. If you really look at it, the graduates are called the millennials today. They no longer want to talk about working of 9 to 5, but they want to work anytime, anywhere, not necessarily in the office, using any device. I will use my phone, my laptop, whatever. Don't wait for company assets. And my focus is not on inputs. We in the past were talking more in terms of inputs. They in the present are more talking about outputs. Don't judge me based on my work hours. Don't just on whether I'm sitting in the office. Judge me based on my deliverables. Have I delivered the way you wanted it and all that? And they create their own ladders. You have YouTubers today. You have people who talk about Viscom in terms of a different perspective. There are so many channels that are being formed in terms of YouTubes where the YouTubers now you have children getting in as YouTubers. There are a lot of other things that happen. So they find their way out. So graduates who are here, kudos to you, great job. But what is important is that is just not sufficient. Today you are able to achieve, but there is a lot more that you might want to get involved into. So it is really, really, really important that you go beyond the curriculum. Now, what I talk about going beyond the curriculum is related to your interest area. Not everything can be said within the college for multiple reasons. One, technology changes every minute, every hour, every second, but universities can change syllabus only over a particular period of time, which is in years. Two, whatever you learn is only a training ground. Murphy's law, if it has to fail, it will fail. So when you get into the production floor, it can fail. So you need to understand what's happening. So look at enhancing your knowledge around data analytics. You can become data scientist. Pick for data scientist course if you're technical. If you're non-technical, you can look at some of the aspects around robotics. Let's say a mechanical graduate. Unless and until you build the sensor, a computer science graduate will not be able to take the sensor data. Unless and until you build the robotics, the computer science guy will not be able to program for the robotics. So you're there, you will not be lost. So be it a technical guy or a non-technical guy, understand where you could do. And I'm not an expert in studying. I just need a graduate, but there is graduation, but there is a lot more. I don't have to do any of these. Perfectly fine. Look at digital marketing, social media management. Look for those kinds of aspects. Get into it. But what is important is classroom training is only one way. Get into online self-study mode or e-learning mode. Start collaborating with your faculty. Get connected with the mentors. Start building whatever you want to as you go by so that it will help out in terms of achieving what you want to. Now, it could look like advice the last probably 10-15 minutes, but I'm sorry, I apologize, but that has to be done that way because this is what the technology is all about, and there could be instances where some people can get lost. I don't want them to get lost, but I want them to survive and grow. And this is an industry which is survival of the fittest, and this is now extended across all industries as a horizontal. So everywhere, unless and until I learn how to adapt myself, it is going to be difficult. So that's why I thought last 15-20 minutes I'll focus on this. With this, I will stop. I will open it out for the forum to ask me any questions. You can feel free to add your comments, thoughts, questions in Q&A. I have tried to answer some of them already, but feel free to ask more questions. The more the merrier, and we can get into it. Those of you who want to connect with me, my connects are already there. You can reach out, or you can reach out to Skillcraft and they will still be able to connect you with me. That's not an issue. The same mail ID that you used, aim@skillcraft consulting, is a good enough one for you to connect with me. They will be able to connect me. Any questions, comments? I know we started a bit late, so it's 6:02 at the moment. I will probably give a few minutes for people to ask questions if there are any, or else we can get into a closure. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Anybody?
Sir, this is Vignesh here.
Yeah.
There is a question in the chat box and I will probably read it for you. Sir, I want to get into data analytics, though it's not my domain area of expertise. I'm upgrading my skills through online courses, as you rightly mentioned. Let me know what is that I must complete before I could say that I mean that they can enter into this business. So here I understand that it's a student, but probably if my understanding is wrong, probably you could chat. I mean, update it in the chat box if my understanding is wrong, sir. But otherwise, I believe it is an individual who's looking to enter into the data analytics portfolio. So maybe you may want to share your views on it.
Yeah, thanks. So typically, if you are a student from a technical angle, your technology, let's say, for example, you're doing your CSE or EEE or ECE, you would have already learned some programming language, and then you will have to get driven into this with a value-added course. If you are from a non-circuit branch like mechanical or civil or whatever, and you're getting into it, you might have to understand some of the programming aspects. So now, a data analytics or a data scientist need not necessarily be a full-grown programmer. Now, basically, what happens if you are wanting to be a data analyst or a data scientist is a combination of artificial intelligence, machine learning, data-oriented operations is what happens, which means at an entry level, I can look at programming, which means I can learn Python and then I can get into it. Or I can extend myself in terms of learning along with Python, probably some of the artificial intelligence machine learning models. Now, coming to machine learning models, let us say, for example, you were good at statistics in your school and you still like maths or stats. You can use your statistical skills and get into machine learning because that's a big market. Machine learning, deep learning is a huge market, wherein a lot of these models, now basically this machine learning, deep learning is nothing big. I told you the machines learn. Now when they learn, they try to build models and then make decisions. Now, deep learning is where you are getting into deeper structures in terms of healthcare and other natural language processing and all that comes in, wherein I talk English, I put some of these text analytics and all that, wherein I will get deeper into it to do it and all that. So basically, machine learning will be an excellent area where you can get into because you know statistics and machine learning is all about statistics. It talks about regression models, it talks about linear regression, multilinear regression.
Want to reiterate the points?
Yeah, I don't know. Let me reiterate. I was talking about people on the circuit branch. You would have learned some of it on Python or something, and you can go deeper with Python or R or whatever. People on the non-circuit branch like mechanical, and you may want to get into one of these, or if you know data, you may probably get into, let's say, data visualization. You know, you're a statistician, you can get into machine learning. There is a lot that happens on machine learning.
Banu sir, you will have to again repeat yourself because we seem to have lost you again.
Where did it stop, Vignesh? Where did it stop? I don't know why it is going off.
No, you will want to reiterate the points you just mentioned because it was on and off.
Okay, circuit branch.
Yeah, perfect.
We are talking about programming. Yeah, we are talking about programming. So you can look at Python. You can look at R, which is more database oriented, but you can look at that as an option. And you can get into programming related to this, wherein you will build models in terms of doing it. People who are not on circuit branch, but know statistics can look at some of the machine learning, which means they will learn the basics of R or something, and then get into a lot of the statistical modeling and all that. People who are not aware of these but still want to get into it can get into data visualization, where they learn some of these tools like Power BI or Tableau or whatever, and then wait for the data to be given. Whatever data you give, I will take it, do it. So if you give me HR data, I do HR analytics. If you give me marketing data, I do marketing analytics. Kind of a scenario can come in. Now, so the question was related to what is it that I need to do if it is data analytics. So today, to a greater extent, data analytics is focusing more in terms of Python, R, the visualization tool, either Power BI or Tableau, and then a lot around artificial intelligence and machine learning. I know you said you've done some courses and all that. So, and I still do not know what graduate you are. So if you have both those details shared, we can probably look at it, or probably we can, considering the time, we can connect offline, connect with me either through the aim@skillcraftconsulting.com or into this one of these mail IDs. Give me all the details in terms of your current graduation or post-graduation, because some people have done MBA with analytics, wherein you would have done data analytics as basics model, so you can get into the other angles. So you can pick any of these and then get in. So my request is, if you can share with me your current graduation or post-graduation level and the trainings you have undergone, I will be able to get into the specifics in terms of what more you will have to do. I have kind of given an answer, but may not probably be telling you do this like a checklist, because for the want of data, probably you can connect with me and then we can take it forward. Hope that
Great, sir.
answers.
Great, sir. Great, sir. I think that was a very fairly intuitive answer there. Sir, I have next couple more interesting questions in the chat box. For the benefit of time, I'm going to club Murugavel's question and another question together. So Murugavel's question here is, it's here. How institutions are ready to teach up these latest techniques? So, I mean, just wait a minute. I would like to club another question which is very much aligned with it. All faculties are yet to upgrade these skills so that they can very impressively teach these skill sets to the millennials. So how do you see it? So so you may want to take it up in a very interesting manner. One side of it, there is a question on how institutions are geared up to teach these latest technologies to the students, and how are the faculties aligned in teaching these skill sets for the benefit of the millennials. So I think it'll be great if you could give some perspective on this as well.
Makes sense. Makes sense. See, there are a couple of things that happen. By institutions, I mean, I assume you are talking about the educational institutions. So there are a couple of things that are happening. Now, in the past, at least 5 to 7 years back, we were talking about Industry Institute Connect. So they had a lot of these seminars, they had a lot of these clubs where people from the industry were called. They were giving some lectures and then going away and all that. Then campus interviews came in, and those who were recruited, that campus will train them and all that. Today, things are evolving. Today, lot of these industry veterans are looking at building center of excellences in the campuses. So the educational institutions are partnering with these industry veterans in terms of building center of institutions related to center of excellence, or whatever you want to call it. Most of them call it COEs, wherein it could be related to analytics, it could be related to digital marketing, it could be related to cybersecurity, whatever. They build it. In fact, TCS, I do not know how many of you are aware, some of the students might probably be aware, had come out with a full-blown engineering course, which is automatically included in the curriculum as part of the Anna University counseling itself. I'm given to understand this year counseling, TCS has asked Anna University not to include, considering the COVID scenarios and the hit, but they've got it. I know, for example, I don't want to name the institution. They have actually tied up with another institution, big industry people in terms of VLSI technology, and they have come out with a post-graduation course, a 2-year post-graduation course on VLSI as an industry thing. The industry institutions are moving towards 2 or 3 things now. One is they are building center of excellences where it is aligned to the company that they are attached to. Like, for example, if TCS normally picks 200 people, for want of any other name, I'm using it. I'm no way connected to TCS, nor have I worked in my 30 years in TCS. So don't even worry. I've taken them as competitors in most of the other organizations that I worked on. So just an example, because a lot of students will talk about TCS. That's why I took it. So basically what they do is they connect with the colleges, build center of excellence. So people who want to do projects, people who want to learn, there is a curriculum, there is a way in which they do the projects, they get trained doing it. Then they have the preference in terms of attending TCS interviews, and they can get connected and they can get recruited for TCS. This is one way of operation that's happening. The second thing that is happening is building graduation courses in partnership with industries. That is also happening now. That cannot happen on an Anna University college, but that can happen on a university or deemed to be university, like what we call the big names that you could talk of is probably some of those that we already have here, which can get into it. So they will start connecting with the industries and then build it. That's the second angle that comes in. Now, the third thing that is happening, again with the autonomous and deemed to be universities, is there are a lot of value-added courses that are being given. Now, some of these value-added courses are not conducted by the college faculty, but are conducted by industry people called as adjunct faculty or visiting faculty. They do it. So when that happens, the industry interaction comes in, the students gets it. So that typically tells you how industries are gearing up. On the other side, when we talk about faculty, there are a lot of faculty development programs that are coming in. AICTC and all these people have now, MHRD has come out with a plan in terms of how many faculty development programs have to be done in a year, what needs to be done. So the faculties are being trained by the industry veterans. So when they get trained by the industry veterans, they get a lot of opportunity. Now, There are a lot more things that are happening wherein these days some of these industries are ready to support faculty by giving them problem statements and all that, wherein they can do the project for themselves using the institution's infrastructure and then see how best they can take it up. So basically I covered it in three angles. One is center of excellences, or whatever name you want to give it. Basically those which are aligned to a particular industry organization. I might have multiple center of excellences on multiple technologies, one on VLSI, one on cybersecurity, one on analytics, one on cloud computing and whatnot, and people can get aligned to it and then they can get trained and move on. The second angle is partnering and building graduations and post-graduation courses. The third angle is the faculty development program. Hope I have answered this. Vignesh, if there is any more on it, I can talk more on it. Interest of time, I'll pause here.
Perfect, sir. I think that was a very, very comprehensive answer you provided there. I would like to again add on a couple of points. Like you rightly pointed out on the Center of Excellence. Interestingly, Skillcraft has a tie with the NEC Corporation, the NEC Japan, whereby Skillcraft also is initiating types with different colleges and universities to provide and help set up Center of Excellences. I think that's a great value add, and I think that's in line with what the industry and the colleges are getting aligned. And I'm sure another view we also want to add on here is the faculties or the team or the mentors in Skillcraft have also been part of very many interesting faculty development initiatives, and probably any faculty here would require any support from us, and we would be more than happy to, contribute towards such an initiative in your respective colleges. So that was another view here. So thanks. I think we are going good. I had a couple more questions, and I thought I should leave it to you to answer. So one question, I don't know whether you would want to take away right now because it's going to be a little interesting. So someone asked about difference between artificial intelligence and data analytics. Would you want to take it up right now, sir? Or just giving
a quick. That's a very interesting question, a nice question. I know you're right. I know where you're coming from. This itself can be one other webinar that we could
get into.
That's right. But in a very short, this thing, see, artificial intelligence is decision making. In simple terms, I'm consciously not going technical. Artificial intelligence itself is decision making. Now, how can I make decisions? Based on the data that I have, I build it and then enable decisioning. So when the data comes in, I will have to do an analysis. When the data comes in, I do an analysis in terms of what is it that I want to look at and take it forward. Now, there is a thin line between artificial intelligence and data analytics. Now, to an extent, data analytics today is being visualized more from the perspective of predictions and prescriptions, which means what is going to happen 2 months down the line, or how do I go? It's as simple as or as complicated as in a 2020, 3 overs, there is a run rate and they start putting it as at the same rate. This is what is the score end of 20 overs at this rate, at this rate. So something similar is where come in, wherein they use it for strategizing it in terms of the overall go-to-market strategy or in terms of the overall revenue generation strategy or whatever. That is where data analytics is used. Now, machine learning and artificial intelligence go hand in glove, and that is more often used for more niche areas, wherein we are talking about, let us say, for example, the cross-selling in terms of it. Now, for example, cross-selling would mean whatever is happening today. I am a customer in a bank. Now, I have a bank account, I have a good balance in it, so I have a relationship manager. But if you notice, the relationship manager does not talk about my bank account also alone, but he talks about my insurance. He talks about loans as in corporate loans like your ODs, or it could be your business loans, or it could even be your home loans. He talks about a lot more of these activities. So that's a cross-selling example. Now, how do they build it? They look at our data, they do an analysis. So there is a lot of modeling that goes into it to say what will go right, what will not go right, using which they do it. So that is one. Or a biggest example in terms of machine learning is on the healthcare area also, or in terms of, I know one organization which talks about the technology here in terms of logistics business, wherein they go to the extent of saying which route to take. And if a vehicle is halted in a route for various reasons, is there an alternative so that they deliver at the same time and don't worry about the stock, or should they wait for this to go? So there are such decisions that are made which happens using the machine learning, artificial intelligence concept. So in essence, if you look at it, data analytics is a broader perspective where any data that you do is analyzed for you to build it. Artificial intelligence is basically using the data. How do you build the intelligence so that you can make a decision? And that is where the learning happens through machine learning. I think in the interest of time, I will give this. But if you still want more details, yes, you can connect with aim@skillcraft.com or skillcraftconsulting.com or with me here, and I will give you more detailed content around it. Hope that gave a bird's eye view of it, Vignesh.
Great, sir. I'm sure that really answered the question in a very precise manner. Another question here for you. Your thoughts on how to protect our data online and improve our privacy. It's a very interesting question. I really wonder if people would be able to use or download applications at all, because the minute you're saying that you want privacy, I still wonder if that is humanly possible. But still, I thought
Okay.
you may want to just share some
point on it. Yes, I see your point. I'll put it very simplistically. When I go out, I lock my house and then go out. So it is in my own interest that I lock my house, not for somebody else. The same way, a lot of this privacy is in my own interest. So what do I mean there is, I will take an example of Facebook. A lot of us are used to the same example that I gave you. We see those ads that are coming in based on what we search on the browser. Now, why is that happening? That is basically because Facebook is buying out the data in terms of cookies, what we call as cookies. Today, most of the sites, when we go in, it says we use cookies, accept. They don't even allow us to deny, or you say make alteration. And if you deny for everything, you will come out of the website. So a lot of this data goes through to Facebook because they are buying it. Now, there is an option in the Facebook security wherein I can go deeper down, probably the 4th level or what, as I told earlier, wherein I can say, don't share this information to Facebook. So that's where it comes in. Again, Facebook, even in WhatsApp, forget WhatsApp status. I can even send it to my Facebook page from WhatsApp today because Facebook is owning WhatsApp. So what is to be protected and what is not to be protected is something that I need to define for myself. For example, when you go to US, you ask for somebody's cell phone number, they will not give it. Today, anywhere and everywhere in India, we survive only on cell phone number. Similarly, they don't give anybody, doesn't give the social security number there, but today we don't care giving the Aadhaar number here. So the point is we need to define what is our boundary, what level of data can go in and what cannot. As an analogy, don't take me wrong, as an analogy, I'll tell you, there is a family related discussion that happens. We discuss with our neighbors, we discuss with our friends and peers. There is something that we share which is more personal to us with a few of them, but certain things we don't share. I think the same analogy has to be brought in terms of the cybersecurity that we are talking about, so that it is for us to define this data can go out, this data cannot go out. Like, for example, a sales data can go out, but if you are talking about the strategy behind sales data, you cannot. Like, for example, 7 years back, Tata Docomo came in with a tie-up with Docomo. Tata had done it. They were the first ones to come up with pulse rate based on seconds in mobile phones. Until then, Airtel or whomever were there and then were not giving us that. But the moment they gave it, everybody started giving it. But the key point is they secured that information from not being given to the competitor, failing which before them the competitor would have come in. So basically, we will have to define what we want to safeguard and then ensure we safeguard it. Any tool that we are using has a security option, or for that matter, any of these like Facebooks and YouTubes have a security. We need to look at it and take it forward. At a very high level, this is what it is. Again, in the interest of time, I'm pausing here. If there is anything follow-up, we can discuss offline. Over to you, Vignesh.
Great, sir. This, I'm not too sure if it's a question. It's an observation.
I am just time check. I do not know whether people are okay. It's 6:25.
So this would be the last question, sir. Okay, probably we will have to wrap it up now. Sure. So there is a question from Mr. Balasubramaniam. So he says, why not young engineers or diploma holders by giving them 100 days on-site training in skill development centers or workshops in private industrial establishments? So he says, why can't we, by doing these initiatives, can we improve the technical skills of youngsters? So it's an observation he's making. So do you want to deliberate on this, sir?
Great question. See, I will look at it twofold. Now, a non-technical versus technical. What I mean is circuit branch versus non-circuit branch, because IT industry invariably do not allow people to enter into their office post 9/11. That is more because of the security threats, and most of these IT industries are working for other customers globally available. So each of them are worried about the security. So they work on what they call as offshore development centers, which are secluded. Even their own employees, only those who are working on those projects will be allowed entry. The others will not be allowed entry in those areas. So what these people do is they try to provide project statements and projects to the college graduates using the college infrastructure and support in terms of doing it. Now, the non-IT, like for example, civil or mechanical, there are industries like, for example, civil, if you take L&T has a process option wherein students or even faculty in certain cases are allowed to act as employees, work in L&T and learn a lot of things. This is on one side. The second side is MHRD, ACT, AEEE, all these people have now gone into a scenario where they are making internship more or less mandatory. So a lot of people are now becoming interns, be it IT or non-IT, internships have opened out. There are multiple people who are giving internships. With the COVID scenario, there are a lot of other engagements which are coming as internships at work from home kind of a scenario. So there are a lot of these internships. Now, internship is basically a trainee, a person is taken in as a trainee and he learned something and comes out saying, during this period, he learned it. Normally, the internship period does not go beyond 3 months, and it is not below 2 weeks. So that's how the internship happens. But some cases they go for a longer duration of internship. So this is definitely happening. But with due respects to all people involved, this has yet not percolated downwards to all types of colleges. Like what I mean is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, when we segregate them, tier 1 definitely colleges are involved into this. Tier 2, some of them are. Tier 3, and more importantly, rural colleges, there is some amount of extension that has to be done. And I know there are organizations who are able to connect with them, work with the rural colleges wherein they are trying to build this. In fact, I know CIE and all these people are also looking at connecting themselves with rural industries and taking it forward. But yes, this has started, but I think it's going to take some more time before it gets spread across to all the colleges. Over to you, Vignesh.
Great, sir. I think we had some really lovely questions. In fact, I love the way you structured the entire presentation, starting from the communication and then moving on to collaboration and then digitization and moving on to the minute internet and then finally focusing on the entire tech trends which are being coming up in the new age and focusing on your industry 4.0 and taking up some amazing questions. And I really love the fact that you had almost everyone covered. In fact, you had kind of preempted the questions on behalf of entrepreneurs, on behalf of students, on behalf of faculty, and on behalf of people at large. I think that was a very, very nice gesture you did. So, which is why probably people didn't really want to reiterate those questions, but still we had some amazing questions from the audience. So I think we've had a wonderful session here. Thanks again.